I'm tired of talking about Black History Month. I'm tired of hearing about Black history. I'm tired of talking about these issues. Those are like the sentiments that I've heard over the month as it relates to Black History Month, or just the talk of anything that has to do with racism and discrimination. Tired of talking about it. Tired of hearing about it. Imagine living it. This is the last day of Black History Month 2021, but this is just the beginning of the latest episode of Let's Chew the Gum. Welcome back. Welcome to Let's Chew the Gum. I'm your host, Protocol. We talk a lot about a lot of things in this show while we chew the gum, and just like every show, we always have
something for your mind, something for your mind, something for your mind,
정신을 집어넣으세요. 어떤 것이 필요합니까?
something for your
정신을 집어넣으세요.
mind,
정신을 집어넣으세요.
something for your
Welcome back to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. We're so glad to have you today, this last day of February 2021, which happens to be the last day of Black History Month for 2021. We started out season 2 just this month. Ironically, coincidentally, we started it out on National Chewing Gum Day, or National Bubblegum Day. That was fitting for Let's Chew the Gum. As always, feel free to send any inquiries to our email address at letschewthegum@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, your questions or thoughts about any of the episodes from season 1, even, especially season 2. This month, we've been discussing a lot as it relates to Black History Month, why it started, how it started, why it's still important to teach it, and we've taken a few questions from audience members as well. So it's been a good month for this podcast. Today we're talking about, since it's the last day of Black History Month for the year, we're really discussing the importance of it. You heard in the intro the discussion about folks being tired of hearing about it, tired of talking about it, etc., etc. This is not surprising. A lot of folks are tired of talking about it, but the idea is, imagine living it. How can we talk about it or not talk about it and expect it to go away? It's like, and when I say go away, I mean racism and discrimination. It's like going to a doctor's office with an ailment. Can you imagine the doctor telling you, well, let's just not talk about it and it'll go away on its own? Or imagine the doctor telling you that he's tired of hearing about your ailment, and if you don't talk about it, it'll go away. We know that that's nonsense. I happen to have been a part of a documentary that was recently released, entitled I Am a Man, and one of the questions that was posed to the panelists had to do with the same factor of the same idea, I should say, of folks being tired of talking about it. I think that I want to bring on a guest today. I haven't invited a guest on the show this year, but I think it's fitting today to have me help me close out Black History Month on the show. So stand by. I'm gonna give a call and see if I can plug this guest into the show. And if we're successful, I'll introduce you. Let's make the call. Here we go.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. Good morning. We are live on the recording. I'm so glad you were able to take this call last minute. You are the first guest on the show for this season. I haven't invited anyone yet, so you're the first.
Wow, well, thank you. I feel very, especially, this last Friday of Black History Month, so thank you for that.
No, absolutely. I was just opening the show and discussing the same, that it's the last day of Black History Month, and I began talking with the audience about how some folks had the idea that they were tired of hearing about these topics, and I had mentioned the fact that I was a part of a documentary that I'm going to introduce you and the documentary soon, where that very response or that topic came up last night. So let me first introduce you, and I'm not going to do justice to your introduction like I should, but I'm going to let everyone know that I have with me on the show today Regina Bell Witherspoon, who is in my estimation, a very accomplished and revered woman in our community. And she's done so much for our community, and I'm happy to have her. She is the producer and creator of the documentary I had mentioned before. And rather than me introduce the documentary, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the opportunity, and also for that beautiful introduction. Not sure that I live up to all of that, but I appreciate it. The documentary actually is called I Am a Man. And really, to be honest with you, Doctor, what moved me to create the documentary was, of course, the horrific murder we all witnessed of George Floyd. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was scared, especially as a mother and wife and daughter, Black men. I honestly believe that each time we find ourselves in those situations, it's a call upon us to do something. The question becomes, what do we do? And so what I thought that I could do that would have purpose and meaning and be able to open up discussion, but beyond that, also move people to do something that was purposeful, was to get these voices collectively together of Black men that I know, that I respect, that I have had the opportunity to work with and observe and see their contributions here in the high desert, get them together to talk about the impact of racism on their lives. And so back in June of last year, in 2 days, we videotaped or filmed 17 men of just diverse backgrounds, multi-generational, to really talk about the impact of racism on their lives. And I just, I've seen this now so many times, of course, because going through the editing process and all that. But I still, at each and every time I see it, I take another nugget, another gem, and I am just in awe of the honesty that came out. And that's exactly what I was after, was the honesty of the impact that racism has had on their lives. So I'm not sure that answers all of your question or exactly what you asked, but that's what the documentary is about.
No, it does, and it goes beyond what I was initially asking, and I appreciate, I appreciated the initial invitation of being asked to be a part of such an important documentary, and it was just as pleasurable to be able to be a part of the screening last night, to witness and see everyone else that participated. Some of the gentlemen I know personally. There was even
Right.
one who was a former student of mine, and of course my son was in the documentary. But I think it's
Yes.
really important that those types of documentaries are available for individuals to see. And I just I'm I'm not shocked, but when I hear people say that, and you'll remember this again from the panelists last night, the idea came up, or the question was asked about individuals being tired, that the reason that discrimination and racism persist is because we have these conversations, or because we talk about these topics. Prior to bringing you on the show, I had mentioned, can you imagine going to the doctor with an ailment and the doctor says, well, we don't want to talk about that. If you just don't talk about it, it'll go away. I mean, can you imagine that?
Right.
So, what would you say to folks that suggest or posit that the problem persists because we're talking about it?
Well, then I think that's the problem. And the problem lies with the person whose mindset is that, whose spirit tells them that. And I think at the nexus of that is the fact that they themselves are uncomfortable. They themselves may not want to face a truth that is not pretty, and that no matter how they try to massage it, no matter how they try to hide it, no matter how they try to not address it, it still keeps coming back because it is a truth. We're often taught or told appropriateness, right? So it is not appropriate. There used to be a time in our society where, in mixed company, so to speak, you didn't talk about religion or politics, right?
Right.
Well, we definitely have moved past that, you know. But I think because there's such a lack of understanding sometimes in circles with people, particularly of non-color, there's such a lack of misunderstanding. There is such an uncomfortableness because who on earth would want to admit that their ancestors, their descendants, their great-grandparents and grandparents contributed to such a horrific injustice on a culture of people simply because of color? Who wants to own that, right?
Absolutely.
And then when people have to come face to face with which side of history are you on? Did you do something about it, or did you let it ride? Do you not want to talk about it because there's benefits and values that you are receiving, and you don't want that to change, or you're afraid if that changes, what that means to you? I mean, it for me, it comes down to clearly just a sense of power and not wanting to face a certain ugly truth. And so when people say that, that's kind of where I go with that, is like, why would you feel that? This history is not incorporated into our American history, right? So where do we get this if we don't educate ourselves, if we don't educate ourselves and educate others? There's no denial about all these wonderful things that we're seeing. Every day people are using their social media platforms to share nuggets, to share information. There's no denying about whether those things are true or not. That's truth. That's part of our American history. So where do we get that outside of sharing, educating, discussing with one another? So if you're tired of that, are you as tired of that, hearing that, as you are about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, right? And And so I think it's just the fact that it's very uncomfortable because there's an admission of truth that they are not yet willing to have. And I for one said we don't back down on that. I'm sorry if that's the way you're feeling, but let's explore why you're feeling that way,
There you go.
because this will not go away. So, I hear that, but I guess I'm rather dismissive of that because I think that that's somebody else's issue, and that issue exists because that individual, that group, whomever it is that is making those statements, is not ready to face the truth of what the impact of why we have to have 1 month a year, you know, um, the truth of why we have to acknowledge it and recognize it that way. Let's deal with that.
Yes, indeed. It's something that I have not heard anyone say they're tired of talking about Pearl Harbor or the Holocaust or the Revolutionary War or any of the any other atrocities that we may know about in history, but this particular one, and I'll take it a step further. I think that the problem exists in terms of racism and discrimination because it hasn't been talked about enough, right? For especially for young people, young people that may grow up and they see these occurrences in society, they see these adverse relationships between groups, and they have no. If we don't talk about it, they don't have a reference to understand why,
They don't have a reference.
and they begin to think it's commonplace or it's normal for these things to occur, and so it's important that we talk about it so that they understand that this history and where this comes from and where certain animosities or injustices have their origin, so that they can be better equipped to do something about it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's. I just wanted to highlight that notion of tired of talking about it. As I said before, imagine living it. Imagine living it day to day.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine living it, but again, I put it back on that that person or that organization or group who's making such a statement. You know, where does that really come from? Let's get to the essence of that. Is it tired of talking about it because it makes you uncomfortable? Let's talk about that. Then why are you uncomfortable?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Let's really drill down and find the basis of it. Because just you being tired of hearing it, you know, does not mean that we cease to have the conversation, that we cease to bring forth the information, that we cease moving forward to make the changes that are necessary if we are who we say we are as Americans, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was jotting down some thoughts. I'd been up for a couple of hours because this was on my mind. I was so inspired by seeing the documentary last night, and a few things came to mind as to why we should talk about it, right? For young people, right? If they don't see themselves, how can they have a reference point to emulate that? So if they can see it, they can believe it, right? And then if they can believe
Yeah.
it, then they can achieve it and be it, right? So that's important.
Right.
And for those that may be on the other end of the spectrum, right, that aren't aware, if they are aware, then they can choose to care, right? If I'm not
Yes.
aware of something, how can I take action to care about it or to make some type of change? So those are just some of the thoughts that I woke up to early this morning as I pondered the documentary.
And in some circles, Professor, that it's thought that I mean, because we've heard this recently, right? We've heard this recently um, in the news cycles and in our society that racism doesn't really exist. Institutionalized racism or systemic racism doesn't really exist, right? And I want to be really clear. We're in 2021, correct?
Last time I checked.
And for someone to really be able to not only form that thought but speak it out, it's like, wow, where have you been? What planet are you living on? Right? And so you're absolutely correct that if we do not bring forth not just the negativity of the issue of racism, but if we do not bring forth the in spite of we thrive as a people, teaching not just our children, our youth, but all youth. This is who we are. This is where we come from. Right?
Absolutely.
We have problems because, to your point, if young people can see it, they are empowered to believe they are it and surpass.
Yes.
Right? But if you don't see that, I got to be honest. I thought in my lifetime that I would never see an African American president.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
However, all of these young people that are a part of this now generation had an opportunity. A lot of them, when they were born, it was a black president, right? So their first exposure to a president was there's a black man in the White House.
Wow, I've never even pondered that's amazing to even think about. Not something that, not only did I not think that would happen in my lifetime, but just to look at it from that perspective that you just proposed. I never thought for some young people, the first president they saw was an African American president.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. We're gonna take a quick break, and then if you're able to, I'd like to come back and talk a little bit more about this topic, but also about your organization and some of the other things that you've been involved in and the offerings that you have for our community. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay, so you're listening to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z while we chew the gum. Remember, if you have questions for myself or you'd like to submit questions for our guests, please email them to letschewthegum@gmail.com. You can catch this podcast on the station where you're listening or anywhere else that podcasts are produced or outlets. Thank you.
Mind, something for your mind, mind,
Please mind again.
something for your mind.
무엇인가 정신에 집어넣으세요.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it could be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast also with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thank you for listening to our sponsors. We're back. You're with Let's Chew the Gum. I'm your host, Protocol, and with me today I have Regina Bell Witherspoon, the producer and creator of the documentary we've been discussing, I Am a Man. And I want to give some time to, a little bit more time to discuss the documentary, but also I want you guys to be able to hear from our guests yourselves about some of the other things that she's involved in, and also how you can screen this documentary if you're interested. Regina, I was thinking this morning that, when I, again, back to folks being tired of talking about this, there are so many statutory and moral violations that go along with this when we look at discrimination and racism. I've had episodes earlier where I talked about, or in my classes talk about, the ending of slavery, and folks often say, well, it ended because it was, morally wrong. And I quickly point out that, if it was morally wrong in folks' eyes, why did it last so long? Hundreds of years, right? It was morally wrong from the beginning. And I know that there are folks that see it as a moral wrong, but that wasn't enough to stop it. And instead, it was economics. You can't compete with slavery. As you have a population growing and a nation expanding, as slavery expands with it, you aren't getting any jobs. So you had so many folks that wanted it to end because of economics, not because, they love the poor Negroes or whatever, right? And I know some did, but it was an economic situation. But and those things persist. So with the, we have a constitution, we're a nation of law. So there's so many violations and so many reasons for this discussion to continue until we have firmly eradicated, discrimination and racism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, well, I think, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead.
No, I was going to say one of them, to that point, within the documentary, I think it was Dr. King, Derek King, who spoke to how we were never seen, Black folks were never seen as human beings. We were seen as property. And so that has been written and definitely very visible throughout not just the Constitution, but Bill of Rights, all of these things that govern us, right? This governance of us, because we were not seen as, even being brought here, we were not seen as human beings. We were seen as property, right? So having these inalienable human rights didn't apply to us, and I think that's where we fail a lot of times, to go back and realize this is the truth of why there are these injustices. It's very I don't want to make it sound so simplistic, but at the essence, at the core of it, for me, it is that we were always seen as less than human, right? And so therefore, our rights, our needs, how we were to be treated, was always looked at through that microscope, I believe, through that lens, right?
Yes.
And then now we get to a point where we all know that's not the case. But now we're talking about economics, and now we're talking about power, right? And when a certain group of people have had a hold on that power for so long, that's not something that they're easily going to let go. So I think that's kind of, for me, how I frame it and look at what we have going on and why.
Yeah, absolutely. In a previous show, I touched upon that also, and suggested that sometimes when folks have been left out of the economic situation within the nation, and they've strived to create their own, whether it was at Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or other locations throughout the United States where folks of African descent have gotten together to collectively produce and sustain themselves economically. Folks even looked at that. It wasn't a situation of asking to share or to be a part. It was saying, hey, well, if we want to reference a favorite movie of mine, when they started making the wagon, circling the wagons, they didn't allow us to circle in the wagons with them, so we made our own. But somehow that was still looked at as a threat and something to envy, where it felt as if they had to destroy.
A threat, independent, right? A threat. Yeah, I think we have to look at it and Professor, that's why it's so critically important that while we are having this moment of recognition and celebration and of our accomplishments as people of color and lifting us up and empowering us, it is important that we also ask ourselves, which tables are we sitting at where we are impacting, affecting change to policy, to legislation, where we are breaking up that so-called sacred ground of white privilege. That's important work that we need to be about every single day, right? And so while I am the first to say, I mean, you asked me to talk a little bit about our nonprofit foundation,
Yes,
Dreamers,
please.
Visionaries, and Leaders. I am every day, on the front line of trying to make inroads, but I'm also very conscious that those inroads need to be made at tables where change actually takes place, meaning that's voted on, meaning that's reviewed and approved, right? Meaning that's woven into the very structure of how we function, right? How we provide oversight and management of those fundamental things that affect our life. I'm so tired of hearing about the disparities. I mean, with this COVID-19, the disparities that exist and are profoundly impacting communities of color. I'm tired of hearing that, right? But if we are not at the tables and part of the decision making bodies, who says where those vaccines go, who oversees where those vaccines go, right? If we are not a part of those processes, then we start to have disparities, right? Because we're not in a position to narrow the opportunities to put eyes on and know that we've got the power of the law behind us to make sure right is happening, fairness is happening, right? And so I just say this morning that let's continue to celebrate. Let's not just be relegated to um, you know um, um, 20 some odd days of a month, or out of the year, that we are upholding and embracing and feeling empowered and emboldened in a lot of ways because of our heritage and who we come from, and the things that we are constantly doing. I mean, the history that we are constantly making on a daily basis. Yes, let's embrace and be emboldened by all of that, but let's also not take our eyes off the fact that we need to be doing way more and pushing forward to get our seats at the tables where this policy and legislation and oversight is being provided. That's where our power lies.
Absolutely. We have to absolutely be doing that. Folks asked me earlier this month, what are you teaching for? What are you doing for Black History? And I just chuckled inside. It was like this one time thing. What are you doing for Valentine's Day almost type deal? And I thought, I said,
Yes.
I said, well, it's an ongoing thing. It's not what am I doing for Black history. I can't teach history, U.S. history, world history without teaching Black history. So it's all the time.
Without it.
It's a part of it. It's history. And although I do recognize and appreciate the importance of the recognition of Black History Month, like you said, we are not relegated to 28 days and every 4 years 29 days to be honored and encouraged and emboldened to act and produce and what have you. But it is ongoing. It is ongoing and so very important. You mentioned, and I want to make sure that my listeners hear, your nonprofit is Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Talk a little bit about the impetus or the well, you mentioned a little bit about the inspiration, but what is Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders? What is it all about, and what is the core mission?
That has changed over the years. I started it back in 2009, actually. And really, the inspiration for starting the organization was simply here in the high desert. I noticed that some years we would have great celebrations of Black History Month, and then other years there may be little to nothing that was really going on. And I thought, you know what, we need to have something that's a bit more consistent. So, in short, what I started out doing with Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders is I thought there are so many African Americans here. Our history is so rich here in the high desert. While I absolutely bow down in honor and gratitude to all of those, iconic historical figures that have gone before, whose shoulders I stand on. I also thought there are people who are part of our living history that are here in the high desert that have gone unnoted, unrecognized, and not celebrated. And so I started out in 2009, really just with the idea that at least my contribution, and I would be consistent every year, was to put together uh, uh, insert that went into our local newspaper, and it was a 32-page special insert. They call it a tabloid, that went into our newspaper, and it was just filled with bios and information on African Americans who were here in the high desert. And I mean, that started off with Dr. Gerard Brown, who came here in the 70s as an oral surgeon. And he was the only African American oral surgeon here in the high desert, right? Serving the whole high desert, not just Victorville, but in the entire high desert. And to date, he is the only African American oral surgeon that has ever been in this area. Well, Dr. Gerard Brown did a number of things beyond his profession while he was here. I mean, and achieved so many awards and accolades and all of that kind of stuff. He has since passed on. He passed on in the 90s, and he has since passed on. But that history, that legacy, the imprint that he left here on the high desert was amazing. And, you know, I, as an African American, was definitely a benefactor of that. But it wasn't just African Americans who are benefactors from that, right? He created a reading program. And I mean, and he's just one of many, right? And so I started off with wanting to highlight and feature those type of individuals, as well as those who were creating living history. And so we did that for a number of years by honoring African Americans in our community. And so to date, our organization has recognized 188 individuals in this community for professional accomplishments as well as their community service. We no longer produce the 32-page insert, but what we do is we've now moved to more of a video platform, and we are recording those histories of those individuals and sharing those out. And we have a Facebook page, excuse me, Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders Facebook page. And on that Facebook page, you will find many of those stories, videotaped stories about a number of people here in our community. Also on our DVL website, DVLproject.com. If you go to the gallery, there is a wealth of information and that can be seen, be viewed via video and photographs and that kind of thing. And on the site itself is a lot of information about the 188 individuals that I've mentioned that have been honored through our organization. One of the things I'm most proud of is that in 2012, actually, we established a scholarship program. And we started out by naming those scholarships after 5 individuals here in the high desert that we felt were legacy namesakes. And so I referenced Dr. Gerard Brown, or talked a little bit about him earlier. Of course, Dr. Gerard Brown is one of our scholarship, our legacy scholarship Bishop Nathaniel Ruffin, who is very well known and commonly recognized throughout not only the high desert, but San Bernardino County, is also one of our legacy scholarship namesakes. Um, Leona Griner, who came here in 1933, and it just was an outstanding, I mean, just an awesome fiber artist and glass artist. She just an amazing woman who was just kind of mother to the community. And she is also one of our legacy namesake scholarships. And Also a lady by the name of Anna Subi, who ran Choice Medical Group for a number of years as their CEO and administrator. She is also one of our legacy namesakes. And then there is recently Garner Morris, who we call Mr. Victorville. We lost Mr. Morris last year, and that loss is still very fresh to me. But Mr. Morris, who had done so much for this community to the point that he had really earned the title of being Mr. Victorville, because he was so involved from everything from politics to making sure that there was nobody that he knew of that was hungry or homeless. And so Mr. Morris's family has now established a legacy namesake scholarship through our DVL Foundation. And so to date, Professor, we have provided well over 40 students here in the high desert with scholarships. We've worked with a number of Southern California Edison, has been a strong benefactor not only to our scholarship program, but we also have a scholar mentor program, which I think is unique because each of our scholarship recipients have access to a mentor that agrees to stay with them for their undergrad experience. And I think you as an educator already can see the power in that. We want our students to get through their programs successfully and to get through their programs efficiently, right? So that they can get to the business of whatever that major is that they have. If it's medicine, if it's law, whatever it is, we want them to be able to move forward and get to that and to be encouraged along their journey. And, a lot of times, especially if it's a first year college, from the family, I'm the first to go to college. There are a lot of challenges that can occur for that particular student. And so we find with having those mentors, it helps a lot to be able to have somebody to help you to navigate that experience in your life. So, we're doing a lot of that kind of work. We do partner with our county libraries and our museum to bring forth exhibitions that showcase Black art, Black work, and tell our stories. We also are involved for the past 8 years. Last year was my last year, December the 4th. I served as deputy director for our first district supervisor, and so of course my exposure to the community was huge and great, and I was able, fortunately, because the supervisor was so supportive of the work that I was doing through DVL, it afforded me to be at various tables and to be able to make sure that Black and brown representation was at those tables. And that's also an extension of the work of DVL. So, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is make sure that we are helping to create as well as preserve the history of people of color. We're a multicultural organization, but we started off with the focus being African American because I wanted to make sure that we were being celebrated and recognized and appropriately honored within our community for all of the contributions that had been made, that are being made, and that will come. So that's the mission, actually, of DVL. And also, as
with anything, you can have the best laid plans, but sometimes you go off script, right? And
Yes.
so in that also we've been able to do a couple of documentaries, and this I Am a Man is our latest project that we contribute to that documentary category. And we are proud to be able to do that kind of work, and very proud that um, you know the sponsorship source that we need to make sure that that type of work can be done is here in our community. We're steadily on the grind working to cultivate more of that, not just for ourselves, but for others who have similar or like desires of telling the stories, of bringing forth the conversations that are sorely needed and most often missed. So that's kind of the work of my foundation, which is 12 years old. That's kind of the work of what we're doing, and I will tell you, Professor, that I'm completely open to always growing, being better, doing more if we can. But whatever we do, we want to do with the spirit of excellence and a standard of excellence. And so that's critically important too, because quite often we have great intentions, but if we are not doing it with the spirit of excellence, a lot of times our work gets unnoticed and negated and dismissed. And that those are things that we don't ever want to be, because we believe that the work that we're doing is significant.
Very, very. I'm just very, very proud of the fact of you're doing that, and I've seen firsthand the benefit of the work that you're doing. So creating, preserving, and providing opportunities and spaces for voice and changes definitely needed. So I just applaud you. As far as the documentary goes, if folks want to premiere or screen the documentary, how can they do it? I firmly believe it's necessary, and I think that it has a lot for everyone that would have the opportunity to see it. How can they gain access to be able to do that?
Sure. Let me just say this before I give that information out. That one, I want to thank you and your son, and I think it was so significant that we were able to have you both participate, and both of you dropped some just really profound nuggets throughout this particular documentary, and I'm incredibly grateful that the two of you were able to participate, and just wanted to say that. Yeah, we are looking, to have people engaged in wanting to screen this. I think one of the things is that this film can also be screened in a space where there are that lends itself for conversation, for panel discussion and conversation, and it's a great way to ease into the conversation of the impact of racism, right, with a diverse audience. And so if there are organizations or individuals who are interested, if you got a book club, a Bible study, or if you represent an organization, I don't care if it's Rotary or if it's, Black History 101. If you're interested, we are more than happy to try and accommodate. And so the way you can do that is you can definitely go to our website, which is dvlproject.com. You will find on that page that there's information on the film. There's a preview of the film, and that you will be able to email us. You can also email me directly. My email is regina@dvlproject.com. And just, let us know what your request is. I do encourage everybody who is listening to at least visit our website, where you can see a preview of the documentary, which will give you a feel for the content of the documentary. But yeah, that's the way they can reach out to us. I'm kind of old school, so we also have a phone number, and that's 760-242-2487. But we absolutely want to make this available to any and everybody who is interested in seeing it and interested in possibly engaging in dialogue and conversation around this particular issue.
Outstanding, outstanding. And so there you've heard it. All the information is there. I'll be sure to, include the information within the description for this show's episode. You have been so, I'm so appreciative again of you coming on to speak with my audience and to speak with me. Again, this was a very inspirational conversation. I was so inspired again from watching the documentary, and I'm always inspired. So for me to say I'm inspired, it's at a high level, because I wake up inspired. It's just a part of me. So it really did enliven me and invigorate me, and continues to encourage me to do even more, to bring those important messages across and continue to help our youth develop, and to help even our older populations to reimagine ourselves, themselves, and what it means to truly live in a country and in a world where everyone matters. You know what I mean? So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Professor, if I could just take this moment to say this, what I really think is critically important is you were thanking me for, inspiration and inspiring, but I want to turn that around and thank you. I think one of the things that we have really got to do more of, and possibly even better, is exactly what brought us together, is networking, is using our resources to lift each other up and to support each other, to band together, to bring new things forward, and to be powerful in our stance, right? Because there is power in numbers. And you have contributed to my numbers in terms of being able to impact and affect this community in ways. I have called on you. It was not only with this particular documentary, but I also remember year before when I called on you with regard to Harriet Tubman and a special screening that we did, and contributing to a companion booklet that we did for students with that. And you answered that call. And so I'm my point really being is how imperative it is, how important it is that we network, that we take full advantage of those resources we have in one another, and use those in ways that are powerful and impactful, and really actually cultivates change. So I really want to take this moment publicly to say thank you to you for answering that call. And once again, when I placed the call to be a part of this documentary, not only did you show up, but you brought your son as well to be a part of. And so I am very grateful and very appreciative of you answering the call, and then for the opportunity today to share with your audience. You use your platform to share with me to promote those things that I am most committed to and believe in. And I just really humbly want to say thank you. I find it a deep privilege, and I'm immensely grateful.
You're so more than welcome, and I'm so, just thankful that I'm able to be a part of it. It is important work, and I will most assuredly continue to support. So it's mutual, and I'm humbled and honored. So thank you again to my audience. I hope that you have enjoyed today's program, this very important program that and discussion that we're having on this last day of Black History Month for for 2021. So last day of Black History Month, but not at all the last day for the discussion. So if you're tired,
right,
get some
we're just getting started.
Rest up. We're just getting started. You've been listening to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. Remember to send your follow-up questions, emails, or show topic ideas to letschewthegum@gmail.com. We thank you for listening, and as always, we have
Something for your mind. Something for your mind.
Let's all gather.
Something for your
마음에 어떤 것 필요합니까?
Something for your
정신에 집어넣으세요.
mind.